Well, good morning. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers in the room. For those of you who have been mothers a long time or a short time, or those that are desiring to be mothers and aren't there yet, happy Mother's Day. We are thankful for what you do and how hard you work. And that being said, that's pretty much the last thing I'm going to say about moms. So, happy Mother's Day. Hey, if you're a guest or a visitor with us today, we're glad that you're here to worship with us. Today we're starting a brand new series. And this series is a little bit different than some of the other ones we started. My hope is that we don't just dance in and out of this one. We hear it Sunday morning, we come back the following week, we just kind of jump in and out. I'm seeing this, and we're talking about this as more of kind of an experiment than a sermon series. This is going to be kind of an all-week challenge for all of us. And before we jump into it, I want to just kind of lay on the table this. Is that what we're going to talk about over the next 7 weeks are some of the easiest topics for us to deny. They're some of the easiest topics for us to justify. And they are some of the most easy topics for us to become defensive about. And so before we move any further, we're just going to decide that we're not going to become defensive. We're not going to get upset. We're not going to not come to church the next week because I didn't like the topic of last week. All month, last month, or beginning of this month, we've been talking about this idea of surrender. Waving a white flag and surrender. And now, stepping into this series called 7, this is practical stuff of surrender. So it's simple stuff. Here's my thought. Is that when Satan can distract us in the common, small areas of life, he doesn't have to work to explode the big things in life. If Satan can get us in the small, little, tiny things, the common things of life, the things that we're used to, then he doesn't have to work as hard to bring the big things. Now, what are these common things that we're talking about? Well, things like food, clothes, media, stress, spending. Common things that some of which we need in life. But too much of a good thing can become a distraction. But we live in America, we have been greatly blessed, and we oftentimes miss that, to kind of scale things into perspective. And that if your family makes $35,000 a year, you are in the top 4% of the wealthiest people in the world. Top 4%. If your family makes $50,000 a year, you're in the top 2% of the wealthiest people in the world. We don't often look at it from that perspective. And we have been greatly blessed. We have abundance. And I would say that probably a lot of us have excess. You know, the storage unit, the garage you can't park in, the basement that you have a path through. Maybe I'm the only one. I don't know. No. We have excess. And if the common things become a distraction in our life, then Satan doesn't have to work hard to blow the big things up. In the Old Testament, the book of Joel, what are we supposed to do with this excess? What are we supposed to do with these common things that just build up in our life? What are we supposed to do with all of these blessings that really we don't know what to do with? Joel chapter 2, verse 12 and 13 says this. Even now declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart, and with fasting and weeping and mourning. Rend your heart and not your garments. Return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and abounding, rich in love. But what are we supposed to do with this excess? But what are we supposed to do with all the stuff that we have? We need to check our hearts. I'm really excited over the next 7 weeks as we look at what this looks like to check our hearts through this 7-week experiment. Let's pray. God, we're thankful for all of the blessings that you have given us. The things that we take for granted, things that we just have or can get at a moment's notice. But Father, too much of that can begin to distort who we are and what we do. So Father, I pray that as we jump into this experiment, in this series, and looking at what your word says about access and about having so much, that area that we oftentimes don't want to talk about, and that we want to justify it to make us feel better. But God, your word is true, and there's sometimes that your word cuts parts where they need to be cut. So Father, I pray that happens. God, help us to hear your word above everything else. Help us to hear your truth. Father, I pray that your Spirit moves in the room. It's in your name we pray. Amen. It's always easier to preach a sermon if you've got the topic figured out. It's a lot harder to preach a sermon if you're in the middle of the struggle. So before we jump in this morning, I want to let you know that I don't know what we're going to talk about this morning. I'm right in the middle of this. I remember when my mom said the dreaded words that I did not want to hear. No younger boy ever wants to hear from their mom. It's the thought of, we probably need to go get you some new clothes. Oh. And then she followed up with, she says, those shorts are getting kind of tight. Oh, come on, Mom. Come on. No. She picked me up after school that day, and she took me to the destination that every young man hopes to go with their mom, especially to go clothes shopping, JCPenney's. We walk in the door, we walk over the section where my clothes were, and she picks up a pair of shorts and she says, how about these? And I said, how about I light myself on fire? Because I never want to wear shorts that look like that in my life. So after much perusing of that section, we finally come to an agreement on a pair of shorts that have a tiny bit of style, but yet also qualified in the price range that she would pay for them. And then, just to make matters worse, if going clothes shopping with your mom was not bad enough, she says, why don't you try them on? No, why don't I don't? Okay, why don't I just leave and let's not? No, I think you need to try them on to make sure they fit. Oh, I'd love to, Mom. Take the shorts and walk into the dressing room. I get in the dressing room and go to pull the shorts up. And I do what I would call the dressing room limbo. You're doing one of these guys to try to get the buckle, the button buckled. You're twisting, you're turning, you're finally going under the stick. And success. You walk out, you can't breathe, and I look at my mom and says, all right, are we good? Then, just to pour salt in an open, nasty wound, she does what every mom does when trying on clothes. She does the finger around the waist trick. Oh, come here, let me check those. No, Mom, come on, you stand there like completely defeated. You have no dignity left. You're looking around saying, I hope there's no one around here that I know or will ever know in life. Because your mom just sitting there checking the pig. And then she says, she goes, well, I can't get my finger in these. Thanks, Mom. Appreciate that. She says, oh, why don't we, maybe we need to go up a size. Oh, do we? Do we need to go up a size? Okay. And then she turns and she takes a step toward what I would call the pit of hell. She turns and she steps and she reaches out, almost out loud. I said, no, Mom! No, not those! It can't be those! And she reaches up and she picks up a pair of shorts and she turns back and she said, why don't you try these on? I said, no, absolutely not. I don't want the husky shorts. I'm not the husky shorts guy. No! Anything. I'll pick up the ugly ones, not the husky ones. She said, why don't you try these on? Walk in the changing room, and admittedly, I didn't have to do the dressing room limbo. I didn't have to do the shake or the shimmy. They actually buttoned. Walk out, and of course, oh, let me check those. No, maybe you shouldn't, Mom. It's bad enough I'm wearing husky shorts. She does the finger tap. Oh, those feel much better. Do they? Thank you. She said, well, why don't we get those? Okay. So we walk up to the register, and I walk out in the parking lot with my head hung like a defeated little soldier. Walking out to the car, we get in the car, we go home. Walk in the door, and my little sister says, oh, did you find shorts? No, shut up, I'm going to punch you. Oh, did you not find any? I was like, oh, he's fine. Walk upstairs, throw my husky shorts on the bed. Frustrated, mad, embarrassed. I don't want to wear these things to school. I can't wear the husky shorts to school. Listen, I want to meet the guy who made the husky shorts and thought that it was a good idea that on the big tag on the back, they put the name. It says husky. Why don't you just write fat kid on the side of it and send the kids to school, all right? Are you kidding me? What kid wants to go with the name tag of husky? No kid, ever. It's like, just put the numbers. The numbers are better. the right husky. Gosh. It's at that moment that I didn't realize it. Buying the husky shorts. It was at that moment that what I didn't realize is that the necessity of food had become a distraction. And more so, what I didn't realize is that I didn't have a food problem. I had and still have a heart struggle. I didn't have a food struggle. I had a heart struggle. Now, statistics would tell us that there is a lot of food struggle. I mean, just basic statistics around America, more than 1/3 of U.S. adults are obese. Obesity-related condition are some of the leading causes of preventable death. The estimated annual medical cost of obesity in the U.S. is $147 billion. The medical costs for people who are obese are $1,400 higher than those of the normal weight. To dial it down a little bit closer to home, the percentage of Missouri residents that's obese is between 25 and 30%. But here's the deal. It's not a food problem because there are skinny people that struggle with blood. It's not a food struggle. It's a heart struggle. And what I'm really happy about is that when I bring my life into the equation and it collides with Jesus' life, I'm not the first person to struggle with this. But we are not the first people to struggle with this. If you brought a Bible, go ahead and open up to Luke chapter 12. Luke chapter 12, Jesus is sitting on the hillside and he's teaching a large crowd of people. And he's warning them about things in their life or things that could happen to them. He's bringing warning on their life. He says, listen, you need to be careful about this. And you also need to be careful about this because these are things that can trip you up. These are things that can tangle your life up. These are things that can make your life a mess. And as Jesus is warning these Jewish people about things in their life that can cause destruction, and finally there's a young man who stands up and with all audacity decides that he's going to ask Jesus a question in the middle of him talking. And in Luke chapter 12, verse 13, he begins like this. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And we're going to stop right there. Normal Jewish customs during this time period is that the older brother received twice the portion of the younger brother when it comes to the inheritance of their father. And so when this man stands up, and this most likely is a younger brother. It's a younger brother, and he stands up, and he stands before Jesus, and he says, listen, it's not fair that my brother gets twice as much as me. Divide it in half, and we both get equal parts. Now, why on earth is he bringing this to Jesus? You see, during this time period, it was very common for rabbis to be involved in civil matters. It was oftentimes a practice that civil matters would be brought to the rabbi to ask questions and to bring a solution to. Because Jewish people oftentimes in civil and religious disputes were kind of married to one another. And so he says to Jesus, who was a rabbi, he says, listen, I need you to solve this for me. I need you to tell your brother to give me my half and not just a third. It's not fair. And what Jesus does here is far more than solving the case. And Jesus replied to the man in verse 14. Jesus replied, man, who appointed me a judge or an arbitrator between you? Then he said to them, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Jesus doesn't take the civil case. He jumps right over it. And he says, you need to be careful. Because your life is not built on the things that you get. Jesus jumped right over the civil dispute and into this man's heart. And then he drives it home. He says in verse 16, Jesus says, he says, and then he told him this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid out for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Verse 21. This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich towards God. See, Jesus jumps right over this civil dispute. He says, listen, who made me judge and arbitrator of this situation in your family? Be careful. Be careful. And watch out. Because inside of this man, and I think the struggle for many of us just in life, and we don't even see it, is an insatiable desire for more. This insatiable desire for more. And that's what's plaguing this man's heart. And that's what Jesus addresses. So I don't care about this inheritance thing. What I care about is how mixed up your heart is right now. That you would rather say, I'm going to take my family to court to get more. See, it's not a land struggle. It's a heart struggle. And so Jesus looks right at this man and he begins to address his heart. You see, if we focus on the more, it will just move us to destruction. And that's what Jesus tells this guy. He says, listen, if all you are is concentrating on your big barns to hold more stuff, it's just going to destroy you. It's just going to destroy you. What Jesus doesn't do, Jesus does not address the field and he doesn't address the barn. He goes right to the heart of it. You see, the food, the barn, the grain, those are results of the heart struggle. Paul writes to the church in Philippi, and in Philippians chapter 3, verse 18, he says this. He says, for as I have often told you, and before and now tell you again, even with tears, you can understand Paul's intensity on this topic. He said, many live as enemies of the cross of Christ. It plagues Paul inside. He says, listen, there are so many people that live outside of who Jesus is. They live outside the cross of Christ. It brings him to tears. But then he says this. He defines who those people are. He says their destiny is destruction. Their God is their stomach. And their glory is in the shame. Their mind is set on earthly things. Hold on a second, Paul. And just because I like going down to the Mexican restaurant does not make me an enemy of the cross of Jesus. And just because I like to enjoy a buffet does not mean that it makes me an enemy of the cross of Jesus. And then I have to ask myself, is it that it doesn't make me an enemy or I don't want it to? Is it that it really is a struggle and I just don't want to admit it? You see, when Paul defines the people who are standing in opposition to Jesus, one of the first things that he mentions is their appetite. Wait a minute. I love Jesus. I mean, I can't be an enemy to him just because of eating habits, right? And the truth of this morning is this. When the common becomes commotion, our hearts are confiscated. When the common things in life, food, when the common becomes commotion, when it becomes a bigger deal than other items in life, when the common becomes commotion, our hearts are stolen. Our hearts are confiscated. They're taken away. Our focus is lost. When the common becomes commotion, our hearts are confiscated. You see, I can't follow Jesus if my heart is distracted and divided. I can't focus on loving other people so they can see Jesus if I'm concentrating on building bigger barns to house my quarter pounders. I can't do it. I can't live and be the person that Jesus wants me to be if I'm focused on all of the ways that I'm going to take care of myself. See, I'm afraid that sometimes food becomes our faith. Instead of trusting Jesus, instead of leaning on Jesus, instead of finding our understanding in Him, we lean on our appetite. You know, when we lose a loved one, instead of leaning on Jesus for understanding, what do? We eat. When we have a bad day at work and everything seems to go wrong and we come home and what do? Eat. And the kids are driving us nuts. We finally get them to bed amidst the fits and tantrums. And what do? We sit down with some ice cream. We eat. Bills are piling up. And we're not sure what to do, but we eat. See, excess eating points to signs of insecurity. And the only way that we will find security is when it's found in our Savior. And that's why Joel, that's why in the book of Joel chapter 2, it says, listen, rend your heart, not your garments. But bring your heart back to God. Who's gracious and compassionate and rich and abounding in love. But bring our heart, because the food, that's just the result of the struggle. It's our hearts that aren't surrendered. That's my struggle. That's my struggle. And the only way that I see, the only thing that becomes a solution is John's word when he's testifying about Jesus in John chapter 3. He says this, he must become greater and I must become less. I can't solve this struggle overnight. I mean, listen, and maybe I'm the only one who I prayed at night, God, help me to become skinny, and I still wake up not skinny. Right? It's not the food struggle. It's my heart. And my heart needs him to become greater. My heart needs him to become more important. My heart needs to have him as the priority. And it's in him that I find trust. And it's in him that I find strength. And I don't try to solve it on my own. You see, when the common it becomes commotion, our hearts are confiscated. And so to have my heart in the place where Jesus needs it to be, he must become greater. And I must become less. Where my hope is not found in the things that I want. Where my struggles day in and day out are not solved at the end of the day. But they are found in you. He must become greater. And I must become less. And so how does this happen? Practically. How does this play out? If you picked up a bulletin when you came in this morning, go ahead and take that out. And on the back of the bulletin, there's a section where normally you write down all the intelligent things I don't say. At the top of that sheet, here's the challenge of today. This series is based off a book written by a lady named Jen Hatmaker. And she does it big scale, and we're dialing it down to make it a little bit more manageable and it doesn't scare all of us. Here's our challenge for this week. And this is why I call it an experiment. It is because of a common thing like food that can become commotion, okay, and steal our hearts, then we need to address it. Okay? And this is not just for overweight people. This is for all of us. And so here's what we're going to do. It's what I'm calling reduce and replace. Okay? On the top of that sheet, there is a blank for 7 foods. Okay? And here is the challenge for the week. Is I want you to pick, I want to challenge you, or all of us together, to pick 7 foods. Okay? And over the next week, that's what we eat. Okay? Now, based off the 2 services, I have some clarification questions. Okay? When I say food, okay, this doesn't mean that you write on the top line, Meat Lovers Pizza from Casey's. Okay? That is not what I'm talking about here. Okay? On line 2, okay, you're not going to write spaghetti and meatballs, with something for dessert. Okay? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about food. Okay? Here's the challenge. Okay? If you're going to have spaghetti this week, that means you have pasta, marinara sauce, okay, and if you have meat in your sauce, okay, that would be 3 of your 7 foods for this next week. Okay. Also, this is not, I'm going to give up 7 foods. So you write 7 foods that you don't eat already, and like, oh, good. Okay, because that's happened. Okay. You pick 7 foods. Okay, and you can mix and match those all week, however you would like. Okay, the girl that wrote the book, she did it for a month. Okay, we're down to a week. Okay? But the challenge is that in order for Jesus to get in the middle of the common commotion, okay, we need to do something drastic. Okay, so maybe we pick chicken. Okay, and you can eat chicken however you like all week, and you can eat it on a salad if you choose lettuce and tomato or something like that to have as a salad. Okay, you can eat it at night. You can choose whatever 7 foods you would like, but only 7. Okay, and in the times this week where you think, man, I'm really hungry, those are the times that we pray for our families. And we reduce the common. We reduce the common and replace it with Jesus. Maybe you get done with your meal a lot quicker than normal. And so maybe you do the dishes and then you spend time together as a family. And maybe you set your cell phone down and actually talk to your spouse instead of texting them across the living room. Okay? It happens. Don't pretend. And we reduce and we replace. We spend time with our family. We're not focused on all of everything that we have to do. There's 7 foods. We reduce it down. And so therefore the common does not become commotion and steal our hearts. 7. Only 7. The common things in life. The common things in life. Like food. We need food. And think of the challenge this week. Okay? It can be really, I know that some of us are going to think, Matt, you're absolutely crazy. Okay, 7 foods. How am I supposed to only eat 7 foods all week? Listen, you're looking at it all wrong. The way we need to be looking at it is, man, Matt, you could have come up here and said we're going to fast all week. 7's a blessing, friends. I mean, I'm giving us the privilege of 7 whole foods, okay? It's not a fast, okay? We get 7 foods to choose from. All right, then you just got to look at it different. If the common becomes commotion, our hearts become distracted, our hearts become stolen. And they're not in the place where Jesus needs them to be. A couple months ago, end of February, I was down in Joplin at a conference with some of the other ministers here at the church, with some of the elders, some of the ministry team leaders. We all went down there together. It was our Christian college, and meals were not provided as a part of the conference, and so we went out to eat. One night we decided we were going to go to Logan's for dinner, Logan's Steakhouse, and we had 2 hours from when we walked in the door to when the next session started. And we thought we've got plenty of time to get in, get our food, still make it on time, a little bit early, get seats. We walk in, and we said, hey, we've got 8. And they said, okay, we've got a table. They sat us right away. And so we all sat down and started to look at the menu and started to expect a waitress to come by and take our drink order. So we're looking at the menu, we're kind of joking with one another, watching the TV around us. Finally, a young lady comes and she said, hey, welcome to Logan's, I'm so-and-so, I'm going to be your waitress. Can I take your drink orders? We said, yeah, sure. And so we gave her our drink orders, and we were all expecting for this to be kind of a quick turnaround. I mean, this motion right here is not very difficult. Okay? However, it became difficult that day. And so we gave her our drink orders, and she disappeared. And so after a long while, she finally came back, said our drinks down. She said, are you guys ready to order your food? Yes, ma'am. We've had 3 days to pick our food, and so we're ready. And she said, okay, well, what would you like? And so she took our food order all the way around the table, and she said, okay, I'll go get that right in for you. I don't know what get that right in means, okay? But it did not mean I'm going to take this back to the kitchen and give it to them so they'll cook it. Okay? And so she disappears once again. We don't see her. Okay? We needed some more drinks. That really didn't happen. After a long while, okay, she comes back. She said, "Oh, can I get you your drinks? And can I get you your refill?" Yeah, sure. And so she takes our water, and she must have knew that we were people who believed in Jesus, because she came back and she tried to baptize 2 guys at our table when she dumped the water on them. So that really didn't work out. And we tried to be gracious, like, "Oh, don't worry. You know, it's okay. We're fine. We're not gonna melt." And she said, "Okay, I'll go get you another drink." Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, so she goes and gets another drink. Our food is still nowhere to be found. After a little bit while longer, she is walking by, and I said, "Ma'am," I said, "do you know where our food is?" And at this point, we're watching the big 2 hours that we had greatly disappearing. Okay, and so I said, "Do you know where our food is at?" I said, "We kind of have someplace else to go." And this is what she said back to me. She said, Yeah, your food's in the kitchen. You're kidding! Oh, I'm so relieved to know that my food's in the kitchen. Oh, you just made my day. And I'm in the kitchen, of all places in the restaurant. Okay, I said, do you know when it's going to come out? No, I'll go check on that. Okay, she again does her Houdini act, and she just disappears and is gone for forever. Finally, one plate of food comes out. There's 8 guys around the table. One plate of food comes, and she sets it down. And we're starting to think, okay, now we're about to roll. You know, the manager's going to come out with like 7 plates, set them all down. We're all going to eat. It's going to be good. No. That one plate of food, apparently she was also seeing if we could multiply it between everyone else. That didn't work out. And so we were sitting there. Pretty soon, the second plate came out. The second plate was my plate. And it was close enough to being correct that I ate it. Okay, but us wanting to be polite, we're sitting there, and the food is sitting in front of us thinking, we'll wait till everyone else gets their food to start eating. I gave up on that like 10 minutes later. I'm like, I'm hungry, I'm praying for myself, you can pray for you, we'll just make this happen. And so I started eating. Another plate comes out. That's 3 plates, and then 4 plates. Number 3 and 4 were not correct. Another plate comes out. Now there is 2 guys on either end of the table that they don't have their food at all. I start eating. A couple other guys start eating. We eat our whole meal. These 2 guys still don't have their food. Okay, one guy at the end, he says to the waitress, he says, "Hey, it seems to be taking a long time to get my meal. If you could just bring it out in a to-go box, that would be great because we need to leave." Okay, yeah, I'll make sure to do that. Like 2 minutes later, here comes his food, and guess what? It wasn't in a to-go box. Yeah, no, of course not. Okay, so she brings out, and he said, "I had just asked for this in a to-go box. You go get me one, or can you put it, in its box?" "Oh, yeah, I'll take care of that." And so she disappears with her food again, with his food again. I don't know. I think she orbits the moon, in between trips to the table. And she comes back and she says, "Well, is everything okay?" No, it's not okay. We're missing 2 meals still. So then she leaves again. "I'm done with my meal. It's now time for us to go to get to the main session of this conference on time." So I get up and very politely, I go and I stand at the kitchen door. And I was hoping to catch her, when the aliens beamed her back down into the kitchen. And so she walked by. I said, "Ma'am," I said, "we're still looking for our 2 meals, one that we brought back to put into to-go box, and then one that we've yet to see." And she said, "Oh, yeah, I'll go get it." And so she goes and she gets the to-go box and his food and brings it back out to him and sits it in front of him. Okay, which we saw as a victory because we still got the meal. Okay, but this is Kevin. Then she comes out, and guess what she did have? The bill. For every one of us around the table, including the guy that didn't have his meal yet. But don't worry, she got his bill, and she got it on time. Okay, so we're still waiting for the food. I was getting a little bit frustrated. I said, "Hey, I'll go outside and get the church van. The one that's got the name of the church and our phone number and everything plastered on the side of it." Okay, I go out and I get that van. I open up the slider door, expecting that all the other guys are going to come out and we're going to rush over to the couch. We're going to make it on time. After like 5 minutes, one of the guys comes out. I said, "Where is everyone?" And he's like, "Well, you paid with cash, and so that was pretty easy. But we paid with our card." And apparently the new technology of a debit card just hit Logan's in Joplin that day. Okay, because it was brand new, apparently, didn't know what was going on. And so they took everyone's debit card and disappeared again. It's like the magic Logan term just disappears. Okay? And they take the debit card, okay, and they just disappear in the back because apparently everything's shut down at just the right moment, perfect storm, of course. Okay? Finally, this guy gets his meal to go. Okay? They throw a couple free desserts at us walking out of the restaurant. Okay? We were like 15 minutes late to the conference. Okay? And I would like to tell you that all of us were very gracious and very understanding and very loving and everything like that. But I'd be lying to you, and we're in church. Okay? Here we are, a group of ministers and elders, ministry team leaders of Crossroads in the church van. And I would like to tell you that that we were able to share the message of Jesus with her, while sitting at the table. And that might have happened if she would have been at the table long enough for that to happen, but we didn't get there, and so it didn't happen. Okay, and I would like to tell you that she saw all grace and all mercy and everything like that, but she didn't. Because we desired our food, and we wanted it in a timely manner, and we wanted good service, or at least decent service, and maybe an apology after it was all said and done. She saw frustration a little bit, and she saw a little bit of anger. She saw a few short fuses when it came to bad service in the restaurants. Even as leaders, the common became commotion. The common necessity for food became commotion. And our hearts were stirred. And so we didn't get a chance to really show Jesus to her, because we were focused on the common necessity of food. For all of us this morning, if the common becomes commotion, our hearts are confiscated, are taken away from the place where Jesus needs them. This morning, is it food? Maybe it's something else that we'll talk about over the next couple weeks. Maybe it is just a common necessity that we need to live. But when it becomes a priority over other things in life, like grace and patience, it steals our hearts. And so maybe this morning, we need to hear the words from the book of Joel. We need to rend our hearts, not our minds. We need to bring our hearts back to Him, like we've been talking about all day. Maybe this morning, the common things in life are where we need to serve. Let's pray.